This is a story that has some parts that I think you can join in and help me with a little bit. This is an old story, and this one comes from India as well. You may have heard some version or other of it. It's called The Elephant and the Blind Men. Long, long ago in India, there lived 6 blind men. They all lived together. Life was difficult, but they had many friends who would come and help them when they needed help, who would read stories to them and tell them stories. And so between them all, they did have quite a lot of knowledge. But not one of those blind men really understood what an elephant was. And one day one of them said, "I really want to find out what an elephant is." Now, they had heard stories about elephants. They even knew about Ganesha, the Indian god said to have the head of an elephant.
Isn't that Ganesh?
Oh, maybe it's pronounced Ganesh. It's different. I've heard it pronounced different ways. And the body of a man. But not one of them really knew what an elephant was. So one of them said, "Well, I have heard that in the Raja's palace garden, there live many elephants. Maybe if we go there tomorrow, we can find out what an elephant is." So the next morning after breakfast, each one of those blind men lined up with a hand on the shoulder of the one in the front. And the shortest one took his white cane, and they walked along, tapping and calling for directions. Which way? Which way to the Raja's palace garden? Now, I have much more understanding of how difficult that was since I visited India once. In Chennai, where I was, cars and tuk-tuks were zooming in the street. There was broken glass and trash along the edges and really no safe place to walk. But somehow those blind men managed to turn this way and that way and that way and this until they arrived at the Raja's palace. And they knocked on the door. Well, to their great delight, the gatekeeper turned out to be someone they knew. And when they told him why they were come, he said, "Wait here, and I'll see what I can do." And the gatekeeper went to the Raja himself and explained. The Raja ordered that his largest elephant be brought into the courtyard. The gatekeeper came back and said, "Follow me, and you will find out what an elephant is." And so the 6 blind men followed the gatekeeper until he said, "Now, you are standing directly in front of an elephant." Those 6 blind men spread out in a line, and they put their hands out in front of them, and they walked forward. The first one to touch the elephant felt something that was rough and tall. "Why, this elephant feels like a wall," he thought to himself. An elephant is like a wall. He had touched the elephant's
Trunk.
side. Now the next blind man was the shorter one, and when he reached out his hands, he felt something round and rough like a tree, and it went all the way down to the ground. How curious, he thought. I couldn't have guessed that an elephant is like a tree. He had touched the elephant's leg. Now the next one was down on this end, and when he reached out his hands, he felt something that was thin and round and hairy, and it hung down. He thought, this elephant is like a rope. An elephant is like a rope. He had touched the elephant's
Trunk. Tail.
tail. Now, up toward the other end of the elephant, one of the blind men reached out and touched something that was kind of round and very thin and flat. How curious! An elephant is like a fan, he thought. An elephant is just like a fan. He had touched the elephant's ear. Now the next one reached out and touched something that was hard and smooth, and it curved down and, ow! It poked his hand. He had touched the elephant's trunk. He thought, how can this be? An elephant is like a sword. Now, when the last one reached out his two hands, he touched something that wiggled and writhed and moved. Oh, it's like a snake, he thought. An elephant is like a snake. And he let go of it as quickly as he could. Well, those blind men thought for a few minutes, and then one of them said, an elephant is like a tree. A tree? No, it's like a snake. I had to let go of it before it bit me. A snake? No, I felt the elephant. An elephant is like a sword. It's exactly like a sword. You're all crazy. An elephant is like a rope. No, an elephant is like a wall. They began to shout at each other in louder and louder voices until the Rajah could hear it in his palace. And he came down to the courtyard, and he stood and listened for a few minutes, and then he shouted, "Stop! You are arguing because you are all six right and all six wrong. An elephant is an immense animal. Each of you has felt but one part of the elephant. If you want to understand what an elephant is, you must talk together so you understand how all those pieces fit together to be one animal." The blind men sat down on the grass then, and they were silent for a long time. And when finally they began to speak again, they listened to one another, and until at last they could understand how each of those parts that they felt could be one section of a huge animal. And when at last they understood, they lined up again, each with a hand on the shoulder of the one in the front, and they went home the way they had come, calling out for directions, happy because they had learned from one another what an elephant really is. That's the story of the blind men and the elephant.